Welcome to Serial Killer Files by Skoob. I'm your host, Arthur Morgan, and today we're diving deep into the chilling mind of one of America's most calculating predators. This isn't just the tale of a brutal killer. It's about manipulation, deception, and a darkness hidden behind a disarming smile. This is the story of Rodney Alcala, a man who wielded photography not as art, but as a weapon. A man who preyed on innocence and eluded justice through a disturbing mastery of the system. From a 12-year-old girl to women just out for a night, his victims' lives were shattered, their stories often overlooked in the shadows of his charm. For over a decade, Alcala played a deadly game, camouflaged in plain sight, twisting truth and trust to his advantage, until finally, the relentless pursuit of justice closed the noose. What you're about to hear goes beyond the headlines and courtroom drama. It's a journey into broken lives, miraculous survival, and the horrifying lengths one man went to satisfy his monstrous urges. Stay with us, because when it comes to darkness, some stories don't just haunt the past, they warn the future. Our story begins not with murder, but with duty. In the early 1960s, a young Rodney Alcala enrolled in a paratrooper training program in North Carolina, assigned to work as a clerk. By all accounts, he executed his responsibilities proficiently. He was the kind of soldier who followed orders, kept his head down, and maintained regular correspondence with his mother through letters. Phone calls were rare luxuries in those days. But beneath this facade of military discipline, something was already fracturing. In 1962, tragedy struck the Alcala family. Rodney's father, Raul Alcala, known as Bucor Alcala, died suddenly in a Tulare County hospital. The obituary in the Porterville Evening Recorder painted a picture of a man who had found new purpose as a Spanish-language instructor, but whose death would send shockwaves through his estranged family. Despite years of separation and his father's remarriage, the loss devastated his children. Rodney's brother, Raul Jr., was at West Point preparing to graduate from the prestigious military academy. While Raul Jr. managed to continue his studies after the funeral, something entirely different was happening to Rodney back at Fort Bragg. 2 years into his military service, Rodney's carefully constructed world collapsed. His mother was preparing dinner one evening in Los Angeles when she heard a knock at her door. There stood her son, disheveled, exhausted, having hitchhiked 3,000 miles from North Carolina. He had gone AWOL. This wasn't the Rodney she knew. This wasn't the intelligent, well-behaved young man who had never been in trouble before. Through extended conversations, Mrs. Alcala slowly pieced together what had happened. Her son was falling apart. She convinced him to surrender. It was the right thing to do, she argued, and the only way to avoid arrest by military police. When Rodney visited the local recruiting station, the interviews that followed revealed the devastating truth. An Army psychologist's assessment led to immediate hospitalization for urgent psychological intervention. Communication with his superiors in North Carolina painted the final picture. Rodney had exhibited signs of a complete nervous breakdown in his final weeks of service, compromising his ability to fulfill even basic duties. The military had broken him, or perhaps it had simply revealed what was already broken inside. This psychological fracture would prove to be the first crack in a dam that would eventually burst with deadly consequences. Fast forward to the 1970s, and Rodney Alcala had found his hunting ground, California. By now, he had transformed himself into something far more dangerous than a troubled ex-soldier. He had become a predator with a perfect cover story: photography. Charlotte Lamb embodied the California dream that so many young people chased in those days. Nicknamed Shug by her family, Charlotte had grown up in poverty in Ohio, where her childhood was marked by her father's drinking problems, but also filled with music. Her father played harmonica with perfect pitch. Her mother sang hymns, and Charlotte developed a beautiful alto voice that had her performing in church trios. After graduating high school, Charlotte made the bold decision to leave Ohio with her boyfriend, seeking the opportunities that California promised. When that relationship ended, she stayed. She had found her calling as a legal secretary, work she was passionate about, and had built a life just 5 blocks from the beach, near a bike path that led to Venice with its roller skaters and craft vendors. Charlotte maintained close ties with her family back in Ohio, calling one of her siblings weekly. When family members would encourage her to move back home, she would respond with her signature giggle, saying that living back home would bore her. Yet they sensed her loneliness, especially during holidays. Her tales of Los Angeles life were cherished by the entire Lamb family, even though her visits home always felt too brief. Her life seemed idyllic until one night when she went to Moody's, a local establishment, and never came home. The investigation that followed revealed a chilling truth. That same evening, Rodney Alcala had also visited Moody's. It was a frequent haunt of his, and he had arrived with malicious intentions. Somehow, someone had coerced Charlotte into leaving with them instead of safely reaching her vehicle. The mystery deepened when investigators connected her disappearance to a gruesome murder in El Segundo, 13 miles from her apartment. But Charlotte wasn't Alcala's only victim during this period. In the same month that Charlotte was tragically killed, shocking news emerged from New York City. Police had discovered the skeletal remains of Ellen Hover, who had vanished 11 months earlier from Manhattan. Ellen's remains were found in a shallow grave on the expansive Rockefeller estate in North Tarrytown, identified through dental records and personal items, 2 rings, an ankle bracelet, and a barrette. This discovery was no coincidence. It came after the FBI had questioned Rodney Alcala in December 1977, during which he confessed to seeing Hover on the day of her disappearance. This confession spurred the NYPD Missing Persons Squad to investigate Alcala's New York connections. They learned something crucial. Alcala had a habit of watching sunsets from the cliffs above the Hudson River, just outside the city. Detective Donald Tasek of the Missing Persons Squad embarked on a relentless search across 600 acres of dense woodland, focusing on these cliffs. Although it was outside his jurisdiction, Tasek's determination paid off. On his 24th visit to the area, he discovered women's underwear and a bra believed to belong to Hover. Days later, further exploration with a garden hoe led to the discovery of bones. The pattern was becoming clear. Alcala was a coast-to-coast killer, using his charm and his camera to lure victims to isolated locations where he could act out his darkest fantasies. February 13th, 1979. Valentine's Day was approaching, but for 15-year-old Monique Hoyt, this would be a day she'd never forget, for entirely different reasons. Monique was hitchhiking in downtown Pasadena when a charming man approached her. He introduced himself as Rodney Alcala and offered her something that would appeal to any teenager, an opportunity to model for a photo contest. The proposition seemed legitimate. His car was filled with photography equipment, and Alcala had perfected his predatory charm. Feeling flattered, Monique got into the car with him, setting in motion what should have been another perfect crime for Alcala. As they drove, Alcala mentioned needing to pick up additional equipment from his home. By the time they arrived at his house, it was too late for the outdoor photo shoot as originally planned. They would stay the night and begin fresh in the morning. Monique, trusting and naive, saw nothing wrong with this plan. The next morning, they drove to the mountains near Banning in Riverside County, about 75 miles from Los Angeles. Alcala parked the car and led Monique on a 15-minute trek into the forest to a location he claimed to have scouted specifically for their shoot. Initially, everything seemed professional. Alcala photographed Monique in various poses while she remained fully clothed. The session felt innocent, normal. Then he asked if she would pose nude. Monique, caught up in the fantasy of being a model, agreed. She undressed, and Alcala continued photographing her naked body. Then came the moment that revealed Alcala's true intentions. He suggested taking some whimsical photos, asking Monique to pull her t-shirt over her face. In that moment of vulnerability, when she couldn't see what was coming, Alcala struck her hard on the head with a tree branch. Monique collapsed, unconscious. But Monique Hoyt had something that would save her life: street smarts. She had lived on the streets for a year, and those survival skills kicked in when she regained consciousness. Instead of panicking, instead of fighting immediately, she made a calculated decision. She would pretend to remain unconscious while planning her escape. What happened next was brutal. Alcala began sexually assaulting her, first biting her, then penetrating her. The agony forced Monique to break her feigned unconsciousness. She screamed, despite Alcala stuffing her mouth with her shirt. Her screaming only incited him further. He choked her until she lost consciousness again. When Monique woke up the second time, she found her wrists and ankles tightly bound. But she also noticed something unexpected. Alcala was lying beside her, crying. In that moment, this 15-year-old girl made a decision that would save her life. She recognized an opportunity and decided to adopt a friendly demeanor to gain his trust. She told him she wished to spend more time with him. She cautiously reached out to touch his arm, convincing him not to reveal what had happened. Monique begged for trust and suggested staying at his house. Her strategy worked. Alcala untied her wrists. She dressed quickly, and they returned to the car in silence. The drive down the mountain must have felt endless for Monique, but she remained calm, waiting for her moment. When Alcala stopped at a gas station, claiming he needed to use the bathroom, that moment finally came. As soon as Alcala entered the restroom, Monique exploded into action. She bolted from the vehicle and ran to a nearby motel, screaming for help, declaring she had been kidnapped and raped. A motel guest quickly dialed 911, and a couple staying at the motel sheltered her in their room until authorities arrived. Monique Hoyt had done something extraordinary. She had survived Rodney Alcala. Her courage, intelligence, and survival instincts had saved her from becoming another statistic. But more importantly, her escape would eventually provide crucial evidence that would help bring Alcala to justice. If Monique Hoyt was the one who got away, 12-year-old Robin Samsoe was the victim whose murder would finally bring Rodney Alcala's reign of terror to an end. Her case would become the linchpin that connected years of unsolved murders and disappearances. Detective Craig Robison led the investigation that began as a straightforward missing persons case, but quickly escalated into something far more sinister. Robin, just 12 years old, had simply vanished, and the desperate search for her had consumed the entire department. The breakthrough came when Bridget Wilvert was brought to the station to work with Marilyn Droz on creating a composite sketch. Bridget had witnessed a man photographing Robin at the beach, the last known sighting of the girl alive. The sketch they produced would change everything. When Robin's remains were finally discovered, the scene was heartbreaking. Detective Robison found her skull and bones scattered at the crime scene, along with a shoe and a full head of blonde hair. Later discoveries included a beach towel that Robin's mother confirmed belonged to her daughter, just like the shoe. The composite sketch generated numerous tips, and they all pointed in the same direction: Rodney Alcala. The man who had been photographing Robin at the beach matched Alcala's description perfectly. On July 24th, Alcala was apprehended and brought to the station while other officers executed a search warrant at his residence. During that search, Sergeant Jenkins observed a receipt for a storage locker in Seattle. Though warrant limitations prevented them from seizing it immediately, they noted the details. Detective Robison later reviewed a recorded conversation between Alcala and his sister, Christine de la Cerda, in which Alcala discussed the storage locker and solicited her help. When officers visited his sister's home the following day, she was uncooperative, but her behavior only confirmed their suspicions. Undeterred, Robison and other detectives flew to Seattle to investigate the storage locker at Safeguard Mini Storage that Alcala had rented on July 11, 1979, for 1 month. What they found inside was a treasure trove of evidence. Hundreds of photographs and a jewelry pouch containing gold studs and a delicate rose earring adorned with a small diamond. Under cross-examination, Robison had to acknowledge painful truths about the case. There were no photographs of Robin, Bridget, Tony Esparza, or Joanne Murchland among Alcala's collection. When questioned about his conversations with Connolly, Robin's mother, Robison recalled the devastating moment when he had to inform her of the discovery of her daughter's remains. Connolly had tearfully begged to see her daughter one last time, and Robison had to gently explain that it wasn't possible due to the condition of the remains. The brutal reality was that Robin's murderer had left her body exposed to the elements and wildlife, making identification through her earlobes impossible, something that would haunt everyone involved in the case. As the investigation into Robin Samsoe's murder expanded, it revealed the true scope of Rodney Alcala's crimes and the methodical nature of his predatory behavior. Huntington Beach police officer Steve Mack became deeply involved in the case, particularly during the years leading up to Alcala's retrial. After Alcala's second conviction for Robin's murder was overturned in 2003, Mack, as the lead homicide detective, dedicated 5 more years to the case before his retirement in 2008. His persistence and thorough investigative work proved pivotal in gathering evidence and making connections that had previously remained hidden. Mack's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. He ensured that existing evidence was reevaluated using new forensic technologies. He arranged for various items from the case, a beach towel, a shoe, pieces of jewelry, to undergo DNA testing. Among these pieces were items found in Alcala's possession, including an earring within what investigators termed his trophy pouch. This earring would ultimately link Alcala to another victim, Charlotte Lamb. Even Alcala's car, still held by the police department after all these years, was transported to the sheriff's crime lab for further DNA analysis. Every piece of evidence was being re-examined through the lens of advancing forensic science. Throughout this process, Mack came to understand Alcala's system-manipulating tactics. Alcala frequently requested changes to his trial dates, allegedly to alleviate his time in jail with periodic releases. Despite his attempts to delay proceedings for personal comfort, Mack noted the importance of consistently refuting Alcala's motions. One of Mack's first direct encounters with Alcala occurred when he worked alongside New York detectives to acquire a court order for a dental impression. They succeeded in obtaining the order, and while Alcala was unresisting during the procedure, he was provocatively smug about the drawn-out process. His only words were telling, "I'm surprised it took you so long to come out here," before maintaining silence for the remainder of their meeting. This interaction gave Mack insight into Alcala's psychology. During the trial, Mack observed Alcala's demeanor carefully, noting effeminate gestures such as frequently brushing his hair back, which suggested possible homosexual tendencies. His interactions with Alcala highlighted the difference between psychological intimidation and physical threat. While Mack had faced far scarier and physically imposing criminals throughout his career, he classified Alcala as fundamentally cowardly, preying mainly on women and lacking the means to confront a man on equal terms. This assessment would prove crucial in understanding how Alcala selected his victims and operated. The courtroom became the final battleground between Rodney Alcala and justice, and what emerged was a chilling portrait of a man whose intelligence was matched only by his complete lack of empathy for his victims. Detective Mack praised the prosecutorial team, Matt and Gina, for their approach and effectiveness with the victims' families. Gina's outgoing nature and Matt's empathetic presentation earned the trust and affection of the families, which became evident through their daily exchanges. These families not only appreciated Gina's warmth, but also acknowledged Matt's contributions, creating moments that moved the entire courtroom to tears. Perhaps most disturbing was Alcala's decision to represent himself in court. Despite having access to competent legal representation, he chose self-representation after disagreeing with his attorney's approach. Mack noted that while Alcala possessed an above-average IQ, his courtroom strategies were ultimately ineffectual. His decision to represent himself stemmed more from a desire to maintain control rather than any genuine understanding of legal intricacies. Throughout the proceedings, Judge Briseno displayed remarkable patience, allowing Alcala to navigate his defense while attempting to simplify complex legal concepts. But the judge's patience would be tested by one particularly disturbing moment that revealed the true depths of Alcala's twisted mind. During the penalty phase of the trial, Alcala made a choice that shocked everyone present. He played a portion of the song Alice's Restaurant during his closing statement. While this song was originally a satirical critique of the Vietnam War, Alcala deliberately selected the segment that detailed explicit desires for violence, lyrics expressing a gruesome fascination with killing and death. Judge Briseno, who had served in Vietnam during 1968-69, reflected on this moment. He remarked that while he wasn't attuned to protest songs during his time in service, the words and violent imagery in what Alcala chose to present struck him as a direct reflection of Alcala's mindset. The judge shared his personal impression that this song served as Alcala's national anthem, encapsulating his thoughts, emotions, and the very essence of his identity when he committed the murders. After 90 minutes of listening to profoundly emotional statements from the victims' families, Judge Briseno turned his full attention to Alcala and formally pronounced the death sentence. The moment was solemn, final, and long overdue. "It is the order of this court that you shall suffer the death penalty," the judge declared, "with said penalty to be carried out within the confines of the state prison at San Quentin, California." He elaborated on the procedure, explaining that Alcala would be transferred to the custody of the Orange County Sheriff, who would then deliver him to the warden at San Quentin State Prison. The official mandate directed the prison warden to hold Rodney James Alcala pending the outcome of any appeals. Once the judgment was finalized, the warden would be commanded to execute the court's decision at a date to be later set. The judge concluded his pronouncement with the simple but powerful words, "Done in open court on the 30th day of March, 2010. But Judge Briseno wasn't finished. Although his usual practice was to remain silent after delivering judgment, he felt compelled to acknowledge the families present. He turned to the audience, recognizing the eloquence with which they had spoken. He empathized with their enormous loss and the enduring pain that such an immoral act of taking life causes. The judge acknowledged that the difficulty of their situation was unmistakably apparent, and he expressed his gratitude for their enduring presence and cooperation with the judicial process. In a case marked by so much darkness, these moments of human compassion provided a glimmer of light. That's our deep dive into the unsettling legacy of Rodney Alcala, a man whose outward charm concealed a brutal predator responsible for years of terror. But this isn't simply a story about crimes or convictions. It's about the fine line between allure and menace, and how darkness can hide behind a friendly face. Yes, Alcala's case is backed by overwhelming evidence and harrowing testimonies. But what about the moments of deception? The victims who remain forgotten? The questions that still linger in the shadows? And perhaps the most haunting question is this: how do we recognize evil when it wears the mask of normalcy? Because when manipulation is wrapped in charisma, uncovering the truth becomes a struggle against both illusion and reality. When justice is stalled, wounds deepen. And when society turns a blind eye, predators find their hunting ground. Rodney Alcala was real. His crimes were horrific. His victims, too many to forget. And the fight to prevent such evil? It continues. To learn more about Alcala's twisted story, his psyche, the bravery of survivors, the dedication of investigators, and the strength of families left behind, visit the Skoob app for the full investigation. This is more than a true crime story. It's a stark reminder that evil can be closer than we think, and that vigilance is our strongest defense. Download Skoob now on the App Store or Play Store. I'm your host, Arthur Morgan. Thank you for joining me on this difficult journey. And remember, when facing darkness, the brightest light is the unwavering pursuit of truth. Stay alert, stay empathetic, and stay informed.